This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, the Game Boy Geek here. Hey, sitting on the throne as the king is a place where a lot of people would love to be. But we can't always do that, so we can be dignitaries or nobles behind the throne, trying to be the ones actually pulling the strings and making the calls. Because today we're talking about Behind the Throne. This is a press your luck card game for 2 to 4 players. Takes about 30 minutes to play. Let me show you how it's played. I'll see you on the other side. Behind the Throne is a press your luck game. The player, whose turn it is going to flip the card over. Then they have a decision to make. Do they stop, or do they continue to press their luck? What they're doing is trying not to bust. If the next card is higher than this is the highest card in the game, by the way, then they would bust. So they're going to flip another card. Then the card is 3. Now they have another decision to make. Do they think the next card is going to be 3 or lower, or do they think they'll be able to modify the next card's number to be 3 or lower? If either of those is true, they can continue to go and decide on what to do. In this case, let's say they're feeling very risky and they go. Oh, they would bust because the 7 is greater than the 3, and I don't have anything to help modify this down to a 3 or less. So my turn would be ended, and this would bust, and this would go away. All these cards would go in this discard pile, but let's just say that I didn't do it. Let's say I stopped. When I stop, I have 2 choices. I can either take all of these cards in front of me, or I can give all the cards that are here to any opponent to take 1 card from them. Now when you take cards, there's some rules of cards that are in front of you. Number 1 is you can only have 5 different rows of cards. Here I just have 2 and that's good. If we already had 5 and I got a new type of card, I'd have to discard 1. You can always have more than 1 of a card. So for example, I have 3 9s, for example. I still just have 2 stalls of cards. Now, how it works is at the end of the game, if you have more than 1 card of anything, it's going to be face value. So if I have 2 or more of the 9s, this is worth 9 points. If I have just 1 of anything, it's worth no points. So this would give me 3 points because it's the second card of 1. That's how the end game scoring works. But let's talk about some of the limitations. We already talked about you can only have 5 different types of cards, but you can only have 5 of any 1 card as well. Let's go over what these different numbers do and the different abilities. Now once again, you can only have 5 different types of cards in front of you at any one time. I have them lined up here for demonstration of what the different abilities do. First of all, look at the first 5. Numbers 1 through 5, all of the numbers have a green background. That's because all these ones have a special thing that goes on. These guys, you have to have the most of those to be able to trigger its ability. The next 2 cards have blue shields, and those are sort of protection. I'll go over those later. And the red ones are hindrances. Yes, they give you the most points, but they actually make the game harder for you. So let's go over all the green actions first. And once again, the green ones, you have to have the most of each of those cards in order to do the ability. So let's just assume we have the most of all of these. The green one, number 1, you can basically make any number 3 less. So when you're flipping over cards, when you're doing the press your luck, I always said if you could modify the number. This helps you modify the number down 3 so that you can possibly get it. Now when you do an action, you flip it like this to say that you cannot do it again this round. By the way, if I did not have the most of this number, or for any of those green scored cards that I don't have the most, I leave them like this, meaning I can never use the ability. Once I have the most of a character that has one of these green shields, I flip it up knowing that I can use it, but then again, after I use it, I exhaust that for 1 full round until my next turn. This one here allows me to look at the card on the top of the next deck to see if I want to continue. This one says I can either add 1 or subtract 1 from the card. Now, all these green ones, you can just use a bunch of them. So I could say, hey, I'm going to subtract it by 3, I'm going to subtract it by another 1, and that's 4. The number 4 here allows you to subtract 2 from a number. Now, the number 5 allows you to take any of these green ones we just talked about, and if it was exhausted, you can redo it. So let's say she was like this, I already used her ability, I could make her available again, but then he gets exhausted. That's the judge, that's how he works. Now the next 2 guys are hindrances. Now we talked a little bit about swapping cards. If you remember, if you're going to stop when you're pressing your luck, you can take all the cards, or you can give all those cards to 1 player to swap for 1 card. If an opponent has this card here, you have to swap for this card. So it sort of protects him from having things swapped from him. Now there's one part of the game I haven't told you about yet. If, when pressing your luck, you bring up a card that has the same value as the card that was just previous, or if you can use things to modify cards. I might have actually pulled a 5 here, but I could use my -2 character to make this actually be a 3. Anytime those are exactly even, you get to destroy a card from an opponent. Now we had just talked about the minstrel who helps us from defense against swapping. Well, the alchemist stops us from that destroying we just talked about. If someone wants to destroy a card from you, they have to destroy your alchemist. If you have multiple ones, well, they destroy one of them, and then later on someone's going to have to destroy another one of them. These last 2 cards are the hindrances we talked about. They're a lot of points, but for the queen. Now, we talked about destroying just a minute ago. Now, if you're going to destroy somebody, you need to have more cards in the press your luck area than how many queens you have. So if you have 2 queens, you need to be on your 3rd card pressing your luck before you can a destroy can happen by matching the card as described before. With the king, you need to be equal or greater than, have equal to or greater than the number of cards that you're pressing your luck with, than the number of kings in order to swap with somebody. And that's what the different abilities do. Now I mentioned this was the beginning of the discard pile. Once this is totally done, we shuffle them all up, we start the deck up again, and then when this card comes out, the game ends immediately. That player doesn't get to score. And then we score, as we said earlier, you add up the points. For any card that you have more than one of, you add those points up, and whoever has the most is the winner. All right, well, there you have Behind the Throne. I typically like press your luck card games, and this one was no different. I thoroughly enjoyed this one a lot. It really impressed me with the way of pressing your luck. And when you stop, you still have 2 choices. Are you going to take the cards, or are you just going to stop at one card and swap a card for somebody else? But watch out, because they could have those minstrels there that will stop you from swapping. It's like, do you go for the lower cards that give you awesome abilities to be able to manipulate the things to keep going and pressing your luck further, but they're not really worth a lot of points? Or do you go for those big powerful guys, the queen and the king, that give you a ton of points at the end, but they hurt you throughout the game too? Or do you go for the defense guys? You set up a good powerful thing and then set up a lot of defense, but then you can't really manipulate a lot. A lot of good decisions to make here. You're messing with other players. The special abilities is cool, where sometimes you got to have that majority for most of them to be able to, exhaust those special abilities, and you're deciding when they go. The game reminded me a lot of one of my favorite pressure luck games called Dead Man's Draw. With the big difference is Dead Man's Draw is when you flip a card, that activates happens right away automatically. Where in this one, you first have to fight for the majority for most of these, and then you're deciding when to use them. Some people that like more control over their pressure luck games like that will like this one better. Some people that like a little bit more chaos might like Dead Man's Draw better. I love Dead Man's Draw, and I really like this one. I was very impressed. I love the different avenues you can go, the different strategies. Excellent, excellent game. I highly recommend Behind the Throne.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for backing me on Kickstarter, making this season become a reality. I'd like to especially thank those here that have backed me at the credit level. Now, these video reviews are also available by audio on our podcast. It's the intros and the final thoughts on GameBoyGeek.com. Click podcast.